Dawn Vogel. I'm the author of a number of stories set in the Cobalt City universe. Today I'm going to be reading a story called Unexpected Sparx. It originally appeared in Cobalt City Dark Carnival, which came out long enough ago that you'll have a difficult time finding it, but if you can get your hands on it, it's got some fantastic carnival themed stories. But this story is also available in Sparks and Arrows, which is my collection of 5 short stories set in the Cobalt City universe that feature Kara Sparx, who's an inventor, and the Huntsman in various incarnations, and then one story where they cross over together. So Unexpected Sparx is a story about Kara Sparx and dealing with the denizens of the Dark Carnival. Kara Sparx groaned as she rolled out of bed. Sleeping on her guest bedroom mattress for a few days had made her realize just how horrible it was. With her sister and niece in town, Kara had decided the two of them should share the master suite, while she slept in the tiny downstairs bedroom ostensibly reserved for guests. Of course, Kara was the first person to sleep on the guest bed. Most of her old friends had a wide array of choices as to where they would stay when they visited Cobalt City. When family came, though, it only made sense to let them stay with her. As Kara stretched and winced at the popping noises of her back, she noticed that the house seemed oddly quiet. She glanced at the clock and realized that she had slept nearly until noon. After waking up by 8 the past 2 mornings, she guessed she needed the extra sleep. But she had been awoken on those mornings by her niece, Bridget. On the first morning, the 7-year-old girl had been digging through Kara's toolbox. The second morning, she had tried to hook up one of Kara's amplifiers. Bridget's mother, Denise, had managed to stop her daughter on both occasions, but the noise didn't let Kara sleep as late as she was accustomed to. Kara reached for her cell phone and checked for messages. Finding none, she called Denise's cell phone, half listening to see if she could hear her sister's ridiculous pop song ringtone in the house. "Hello?" Denise's voice was distorted by a heavy wind. "Denise, did you and Bridget go out?" "Oh yeah, we didn't want to wake you. Bridget kept seeing those carnival posters everywhere, and she promised to be extra quiet this morning if I took her." Kara groaned inwardly. "Denise, I told you the carnival was a bad idea." "I know, but you've seen how Bridget can get. I didn't want her to get into your stuff again. I just figured we'd get out of your hair and let you sleep late this morning. You've been a bit grumpy the past 2 mornings." Kara bit the inside of her cheek to keep herself from responding too quickly. "Well, thanks. I do appreciate the extra sleep. Tell you what, I'll meet you at the zoo in an hour." "Oh, that won't work. Bridget has her heart set on a puppet show at 1:30. Can you meet us here instead?" Kara winced at the thought of a puppet show with more children like Bridget. "Yeah, I'll be there soon. Just need a shower and some coffee." "Great, Kara. Bridget will be so glad you're going to join us. See you soon." Kara tossed her phone back on to her bedside table and rubbed her eyes. "Lumion?" "Good morning, Kara." Her robot's voice came through an interface as crisp as though he was standing in front of her. "Denise took Bridget to the carnival. Do we have any new intel on it?" "No reports have been filed at our clearance level, a situation which would be remedied if you became an active member of the Protectorate. However, I have indications that several of the Protectorate have been running surveillance on the location for several days." Kara toyed with the idea of calling a contact, but as she ran down the list of likely candidates, she decided that she wasn't quite ready to drag anyone else in yet. It was still hours until sunset, and the information she had gleaned about the last visit of Le Carnaval Pomme d'Or, mostly from the less secure files of the Protectorate, suggested that the worst occurrences all took place after dark. "Get my things, Lumion. We're going to the carnival." It took Kara a little longer than planned to get to the carnival. As she showered, she thought about how to explain to Denise and Bridget why they really shouldn't spend a lot of time at the carnival. She had already told Denise about the high rate of disappearances the last time the carnival came to Cobalt City. Denise, however, had chalked it up to lax parenting standards of the early 1980s. Kara bristled at the implication. She was still a few years shy of 30, making her a child of the 80s. Denise was 12 years older than Kara, and the age difference was often apparent when they reminisced about their respective childhoods. Kara and Lumion arrived at the carnival a little after 1. Lumion had covered his brass exterior with a holographic projection of a broad-shouldered man with a toddler on each arm. Kara marveled sometimes at how good her robot was at blending in. Just as Kara was about to go over the game plan with Lumion, her cell phone rang. "Hi, Denise. I just got here." "Oh, good. I don't know how much longer we can save you a seat at the puppet show." "Right, puppet show." Kara scanned the map of the carnival grounds. Lumion pointed to the location on the map before she could spot it on her own. "Thanks, Lu." Realizing she was still connected to Denise, she cut herself off. "I'll be right there." She hung up the phone and looked imploringly at Lumion. "Sometimes I wish that you were able to get sick. Then I'd have an excuse to get out of family visits." Lumion looked at Kara quizzically. "Should I feign illness?" No, just take a walk around. Try to find any hidden exits in case we need to get out of here quickly. I'm not fond of the thought that there's only one way in or out." "Of course, Kara." Kara turned and headed in the direction of the puppet show. At every turn, she ignored the carnival barkers trying to lure unsuspecting patrons into their tents. Kara possessed no special way of sensing danger, but she knew that this place was giving her the creeps. In the daylight, it was the most polished carnival she had ever been to. The tents were bright and colorful, showing no signs of fading or patching. The air was heavy with scents of kettle corn and cotton candy, but without the underlying smell of vomit that usually accompanied carnival rides. By all outward appearances, this could have been one of the happiest places on earth, and that made Kara even more wary. The only sound that caused her any alarm was the creaking of the Ferris wheel as it slowly rotated. A screech, like two pieces of metal rubbing against one another, pierced Kara's ears. She looked over toward the Ferris wheel and watched the ride operator, a hunchbacked, elderly man, bang on the support beam that stabilized the ride. The screeching noise subsided as quickly as it had begun. Reaching the puppet show, Kara bought her ticket and pushed past the heavy canvas flap of the tent. Out of the corner of her eye, she thought she saw a chihuahua-sized creature scurry away. The dim lighting of the tent prevented her from seeing details more clearly, but she noticed a handful of soccer moms with purse dogs in the audience. Before Kara could investigate further, Denise waved to her. Kara made her way down, moving carefully so as to not jostle any of the other patrons. She wore her leather jacket a little larger than necessary to conceal the rocket pack strapped to her back. Bumping into anyone would draw attention to the sizable metallic mass. "Hi, Auntie Kara," Bridget exclaimed as Kara sat down. "Aren't you excited to see the puppets?" Kara glanced at the small puppet stage at one end of the tent. "Yeah, I'm sure it'll be really great, Bridget." Bridget turned around and settled into her seat. Denise leaned closer to Kara. "Who's Lou?" Kara arched one eyebrow, preparing to respond, when the audience erupted into applause. The lights in the tent dimmed, and a pair of puppets appeared on the stage, lit by the harsh white light of a single spotlight. "Saved by the puppets," she muttered. "Oh, no, you're not," Denise whispered with a sly smile. Kara grimaced, partially at her sister and partially at the poorly piped-in music that accompanied the puppet show. The speakers distorted the sound nearly beyond recognition, but it sounded like a warped version of Pop Goes the Weasel. Somehow, all of the children in the audience were entranced, while most of the adults in the audience were glued to their smartphones. Denise, however, focused her attention on Kara. "What, aren't you going to watch the puppets?" Kara asked. "No, I want to hear about your friend, Lou." "Lou?" "When we were on the phone, you said, 'Thanks, Lou.' So, who is he? Or is it a she? Boyfriend? Girlfriend?" Kara laughed, a far harsher sound than she had anticipated. "God, no, Denise." Then she paused, trying to figure out how to explain her robot to her sister. Lumion hadn't been out of the lab since Denise and Bridget had arrived, and Kara had simply waved past the door when she gave them the tour of the house, muttering something about the basement being a mess. "Look, can we talk about this later?" "We're here now," Denise replied. Kara sighed. The repetitive music was getting on her nerves, but she saw no easy escape. "Fine. Lou is short for, Lucian. He's just a friend." Denise smiled knowingly. "You say that now, but just you wait." "You're like those people who talk in the theater, sis. Special hell. Shut up and watch the puppets." Kara stood outside the puppet show tent with Denise and Bridget after the show. "So, ready for the zoo?" "No way," Bridget said with a stomp of her foot. "Mom bought me a bunch of ride tickets. Mom, can I hold them?" Denise dug through her purse and handed her daughter a wad of red tickets. "Put them in your pocket, honey." Bridget instead began to count the tickets, and Denise turned her attention back to Kara. "So, Lucian—" "Mom," Bridget interrupted, "I have 15 ride tickets." "Not now, honey. Auntie Kara and I are having grown-up time." Bridget rolled her eyes, looking every bit like her mother's daughter. Kara had only been a toddler when Denise was a teenager, but she remembered her sister's attitude. She wasn't surprised that Bridget had picked it up. "So, is he European?" Kara laughed. "No, not exactly. Maybe a little bit Swiss, but he's not really from there." "Swiss, huh? Sounds exotic." "What would it take for me to convince you that Lucian and I are just friends? There's nothing there." "Mom, I'm bored. Can I go ride the rides now?" Bridget peered up at her mother hopefully. Denise sighed, ignoring her daughter. "Okay, but Kara, sweetie, I just think it's time for you to settle down with a nice guy. Or girl, whichever." "Really? If I remember right, sis, that didn't work out so well for you." Kara wished she had bitten her tongue as soon as the words were out of her mouth. Denise looked crestfallen. "You know, do as I say, not as I do. I just want you to be happy." "I think I'm happier on my own, sis." "I guess. But you know it would make Mom and Dad happy, too. They're not as young as they once were. Mom's been talking about wanting a big Christmas again, lots of cousins and kids running around, like it was when you were little." Kara tried not to roll her eyes, but her arms crossed almost involuntarily as she tried to end the discussion. She turned her head away from Denise and noticed that Bridget was no longer standing near them. "Where's Bridget?" Denise spun around, frantically looking for her daughter. Kara scanned the area more slowly, but the crowds were thick around them. Soundlessly, she channeled her thoughts into the communication system between herself and Lumian. "Lumian, Bridget has disappeared. Tell me you got that tracker implanted in her sneaker before she left?" "Yes, it is installed and functional. Bridget appears to be approximately 20 feet above the surface of the Earth at present." Kara shifted her gaze upward and spotted the Ferris wheel. She grabbed Denise by the arm and pointed. "She's up there." "Bridget!" Denise exclaimed. "Why on earth would the ride operator let a 7-year-old on the Ferris wheel by herself?" Kara shrugged, but Denise stalked off toward the ride, ready to give the elderly carney a piece of her mind. Kara hung back and watched the giant wheel spin. For as new as the ride looked, the motion was not nearly as smooth as she would have expected. Brow furrowing, she pulled her goggles from an interior pocket and put them on. "Lumian, I'm sending you a feed from the Ferris wheel. Can you run it through the optics?" "Of course, Kara." A moment passed before he spoke again. "Kara, there seems to be a growing level of energy at the center of the mechanism." As Lumian spoke, Kara watched the wheel stop moving and shift downward. Without warning, one of the legs on either side of the Ferris wheel pulled free of the ground and began writhing snake-like. "The energy appears to have peaked," Lumian reported. "I'll say, we've got trouble. I'm going to need some crowd control." Kara shrugged out of her jacket and tossed it at a nearby onlooker. "Hang on to that for me, will you?" The young man was staring at the Ferris wheel, a look of horror on his face. Kara shook her head and flipped the thrusters on her rocket pack into action. Kara flew upward, keeping her distance from the flailing legs of the Ferris wheel. Each broad sweep of the appendages cleared a slightly broader space as the assembled crowds tried to run. From the air, Kara could see the likely source of the energy that had animated the Ferris wheel. The top of the axle was crackling with sickly green energy. The caged car holding Bridget and a few other children was near the top of the Ferris wheel. Kara flew a little closer so that she could get a good look at the mechanism that held the door closed. The entire Ferris wheel shook as the free legs tugged at the two legs that were still stationary. It looked like it was trying to free itself from quicksand. Adjusting the focus on her goggles, Kara used the zoom lens to provide a clearer view of the lock. "Lumian, I'm sending you a picture of the locking mechanism. I need to know the fastest way to get it open." Lumian responded almost immediately. "It is an electronic bolting mechanism. A brief burst from your zap gun should disengage the lock." Kara swooped down toward the cars that were only a few feet off the ground. "Stand clear of the door," she announced to the passengers, leveling one of her zap guns at the lock. The passengers crowded to the opposite side, and she unleashed a quick blast. The mechanism hummed, followed by a click. "Go, get out of here, and move away from the Ferris wheel." A middle-aged woman took the children by the hand and hurried out the open door. Kara moved toward the next car, but found her way impeded by a flailing Ferris wheel leg. She rocketed upward, passing the car that Bridget was trapped in. "Aunt Kara!" the girl called out. Kara waved at her niece dismissively. "Not now, I'm a little busy." She looked up at Bridget, trying to muster a smile. "I'll get you out of there, promise." As she turned her attention back to the animated ride, she spotted one of the legs flying directly toward her. She dodged to her left, her right shoulder clipping the frame of the caged car that Bridget was in. She released her hold on the zap gun in that hand and heard it clatter off of the bars of the cage. Before she could locate where it had fallen, the other leg swung at her, coming perilously close to the cage. "Lumian, I need help." Can you keep one of the legs occupied? I need this thing to stop swinging at me so I can get the passengers out. Affirmative, Lumiere chirped. Kara couldn't see what her robot was up to, but one of the legs was no longer anywhere near the cages. She took off in the other direction, flying in the sort of loops and spirals that she normally saved for paying customers who had hired her to put on an aerial show. In the distance, Kara heard a pulse fired from her missing zap gun. She scanned the ground, trying to find it. She noticed a few small dark spots on the ground, which seemed to be heading in Lumiere's direction. Before she could warn him, she saw that the door to Bridget's cage was hanging open. The girl was shimmying down one of the spokes toward the center of the Ferris wheel. Kara cursed under her breath and started toward the thin spoke. The Ferris wheel swung at her, blocking her movement toward her niece. "Oh, now you're just making me mad." She fired off an ineffectual blast from her remaining zap gun, watching as the electricity skittered across the surface of the leg. A small shriek from Bridget was just loud enough to draw Kara's attention. The girl was still crawling down the spoke, but she waved one of her hands back and forth. Kara could just make out a scorch mark across her palm. "Lumiere, don't hit it with anything electrical. It conducts." "Indeed," Lumiere said, sounding a bit rattled. "I just received a shock of myself." "All right, get ready. I need you to run through the center when I fly through to get Bridget. And 5, 4, 3... Before Kara could finish her countdown, she heard the swirling calliope of carnival music. She paused, watching as the wheel began to turn slowly. Bridget had reached the axle and had perched on the end of it. She fired a beam of electricity downward, aiming for a gap in the loading platform. 2 of the cages moved onto the loading platform, and Bridget stopped. Kara grinned from ear to ear and fired off 2 quick shots to unlock the doors of the cars. Bridget turned her head slightly, and Kara could see that the girl's facial expression matched hers. "Scratch that, Lumiere. Just keep the thing distracted while we get the passengers out." Bridget continued to rotate the Ferris wheel to move more occupied cars into the unloading position. Kara began flying in long, lazy ellipsoid shapes to keep the animated Ferris wheel occupied and get herself into the right position to unlock the doors as soon as Bridget had cars in position. The 2 of them made quick work of the job, and Kara flew up toward her niece. "Not bad, kiddo. Now let's get you out of here." She stretched out her arms to the girl. "Aunt Kara, watch out!" Bridget exclaimed. Too late, Kara turned to see one of the legs plow into her midsection. As the air escaped her lungs, the rocket pack sputtered, threatening to stall. She regained enough of her senses to steer herself toward a nearby tent, but the impact was nearly as bad as it would have been had she hit the ground. "Lumiere," she croaked. "I am having a bit of unanticipated difficulty at the moment, Kara. I will get to you as soon as I can." "Unanticipated difficulty?" "Yes, Kara. At the moment there are puppets attached to all of my appendages. They have drained my power capacity to less than 40%. "I guess jolting them isn't an option, then." She thought for a moment, lifting herself up on her elbows to survey the scene. Bridget clutched the axle as tightly as she could while staying away from the strange energy there. Lumiere was, as he said, covered in small dark shapes that looked a lot like the thing Kara had spotted earlier at the puppet show. "Wait. Get as close to the Ferris wheel as you can. It's got way more power than you do. Get the puppets to attack it." Lumiere's voice sounded tired, like a record played too slowly. "Yes, Kara." Kara braced herself and rose to her knees. Every inch of her body hurt, but she had enough self-control to pilot the rocket pack. She hoped she would have enough strength to safely transport her niece to the ground. Falling would not be an option with a 7-year-old girl clinging to her. She watched as Lumiere wrapped his arms around the remaining leg on his side of the Ferris wheel. Instantly, the puppets released their hold on him and began scurrying up toward the axle. Kara activated her rocket pack and flew toward Bridget. "Bridget, you crawled down that spoke and didn't fall. I need you to hold on to me just as tight." Bridget nodded solemnly, tucking the zap gun back into the holster on Kara's chest. She slung her arms around Kara's neck and squeezed her knees around Kara's hips. One of the Ferris wheel's legs flailed in their direction, but fell short. Kara still didn't want to take any chances. She flew away from the Ferris wheel twice as far as the leg could reach and landed, carefully lowering Bridget to the ground. "Is your robot going to be okay?" Bridget asked. "How did you—" "Oh, I guess he can't hide himself right now. He'll be fine." Kara glanced up and noticed Denise rushing in their direction. "Here comes your mom." "Bridget! Kara!" Denise exclaimed. "Are you all right?" "We're fine, Mom," Bridget replied. "Aren't we, Aunt Kara?" "Thanks to you," Kara admitted. She looked at Denise. "You've got yourself a little Sparx, that's for sure." The end.